Hello, beautiful soul sister, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Powered Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Kiger. I'm a trauma-informed master mindset and money coach, as well as a financial expert of over 17 years. I have spent my entire adult life studying the difference between successful and unsuccessful people, and I plan on sharing all of the things with you on this journey together. This podcast is called the Soul Powered Podcast because it's my desire to share with you how to create a life that is powered by your soul, not by societal standards or what everyone else in your life tells you that you should be doing, but actually powered by your soul. The reason you'd want to do this is because I believe that this is the fastest way to unlock your portal to prosperity and become what I call the wildly wealthy woman. This is the portal that once you enter it, you gain access to the prosperity, abundance, wealth, time freedom, experiences, fulfillment that are your birthright. I don't believe that you came here to build someone else's dreams. I believe you came here to live your soul-powered life and live it to the fullest. And I plan on sharing with you exactly how to do that during our time together. So thank you so much for being here. I know we're going to have so much fun together today. Let's dive in. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Powered Podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. I have Julie Chandler, who is a dear friend now that we've gotten to meet over the last year, and I'm really excited to bring her on. We have some juicy topics to talk about today, and welcome to the show, Julie. How are you?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm really well, thank you.
Yay. Okay, so I know that those who are listening are going to hear our accent differences. So where are you dialing in from? Where are you in the world?
I am over in the UK. I always describe it as the bump that is on the right-hand side when you look at it. I'm over there. It's just a nice, peaceful existence over here.
I love it. I can't wait to come. I've been really planning this trip to like Europe for like the last couple of years with my best friend who is from the UK as well. And my husband and I were talking about it. And I'm like, I think that we're gonna plan that probably towards the end of this year or next year. I want to do like a whole like couple weeks at least so we can
Mm.
go explore a whole lot, but hopefully hitting, all of the things around you as well.
Yes, it's beautiful around here. Honestly, really stunning. Like some of the best coastline. I think the movie The Beach was filmed just like up the
Okay.
road from me. Yeah, like they.
Wow. Look at
I
you.
believe that's the notorious story I was told when I was younger. I don't know how true it is.
How far are you from the actual beach?
It's about a 25-minute drive, if
Oh,
that.
that's so
Like,
nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's everywhere's near the beach here, though. That's how I see it. It's like such a small island, really, like when you think
I
about
know. Yeah. Yeah,
it.
really, it is because our country's so huge. Okay. Anyways, we digress. So let's talk a little bit about who you are and who is it that you help in the world? Like, what do you do? Who is Julie Chandler?
So I classify myself as a psychic business coach, which I get is a little bit niche and a little bit different. Essentially, I'm helping any female business owner who really needs help kind of navigating the energetics of their business, whether that is clarity in their next steps, whether that's looking at the energy in their launches, really aligning their energy from kind of, I call it their energy imprint. So human design, astrology, just who they are. I mean, I get to speak to their lovely spirit teams and find out all about them as a psychic. So really infusing that through their whole business. Healing the energy blocks is a massive one right now that I'm really honing in on. So, yeah, all things wonderful and woo with a straightforward practicality, if that's
I
even
love that.
possible. Like,
I love that. No, because I think it's so important and this is becoming more mainstream, I think, than, like I feel like had we had this conversation, right, 5, 10, even, 15 years ago, right? Like I think it's so cool. I was getting my lashes done yesterday because I go and get my lashes done. And I was talking to the girl who does them and she goes, yeah, my dad he said, okay, so this is like, I think he's like 65, something like that. And she goes, yeah, my dad said that we jump timelines and this and that. And I'm like, wait, what? Like these are normal conversations that we're having
yes,
now. And I think
yeah.
it's like the coolest thing ever that people are so open to this. And I would love to just hear, like, obviously there's a journey that brought you here, right? And I don't even know that I've heard this yet. So tell us your story. Like, what brought you to this? And have you always had these gifts? Is this something newer that you've tapped into as you've gotten older? Like, walk us through a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I'm not your typical like, oh, my parents are also psychic, so we're all doing this. It's really not that. My mum is Irish, so Roman Catholic through and through. I'm not even allowed to remotely talk about anyone that is deceased that I can communicate with on her family because they would
Oh.
be in purgatory if that was the case, and we're not allowed to do that. Although she's very open to me speaking about people who are on my dad's side of the family. So she's interested in that, but not her own, which is always a funny thing. But my dad is atheist. He's really just not bothered. So grew up without any kind of real spiritual structure, but yet was always fascinated with it. When I was taken to libraries or bookstores as a child, but my parents are big book people. So I remember being like 4, 5, 6, just sitting in bookstores and being in the one spiritual. It would literally be the smallest section and it would be right at the floor as well. It would literally be like a meter long. And that's the only spiritual books that were in the store. And I would be there trying to open the tarot packs and things like that. So I was always fascinated with it. And thinking back now, I've always had a connection, but I just didn't know what it was. I had no concept that that was what it was. There was stuff that happened in the house, and I was adamant the house was haunted, but it never happened around anyone else. It was just me. My parents' house also backs out on a really old cemetery, by the way. So that also gave some spooky ghoul to my lifestyle when I was a child of like, it's definitely haunted. No, no, it's just the graveyard and your friends are telling you stories. It's like, no, but
Mm.
things are moving. Like I'm hearing my name being called. Like all of that kind of thing happened when I was young.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. But again, just didn't really acknowledge it. There was a lot of kind of, I remember being through school years and sort of seeing things, but never speaking about it, like just not ever talking about it. And it really wasn't until my early, it was very early 20s when everything just kind of started happening. And again, I wouldn't speak about it. I just didn't tell people. It's like, oh, I wake up in the night and there's people in the room. Like, who am I going to tell that to? Like, I just can't share that story with my friends who are just wanting to party and have a good time. And I'm like, yeah, but who's in the room though? Who is that? What's happening? Like,
Wow.
so yeah, I mean, I'm now 40, so we're talking like 20 odd years of like, and like you say about like it being more mainstream. Back then, I didn't know where to look, who to talk to, and I didn't fit into anything when I did. So when I did embrace it, I would go and it would be like strict rules of how to practice or how to, you had to meditate this way to connect to this, and you had to do this to connect
Yeah.
to that. And I just never resonated with any of it. I'm not the most spiritual. I'm a happy-go-lucky, sweary party goer. Like I was never very spiritual at all. Like,
Wow.
so yeah,
That's
it's been a really fascinating journey. And just like, yeah, once I accepted it, I think the first time that I really knew it was real, my brother, he had a previous wife and she was really into it. So she did ghost hunts. So she made a psychic come to the house, speak to, they would like a group of them, and he told me all about it and was just like, oh, it was really fascinating. Like they told us all about granddad and da 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 da. And I was like, let me talk to her. I want to talk to her. And at the time, I was living a good like 100, 200 miles away from my brother. So there was no way to connect the two of us for her. And I spoke to her on a landline. This is how long ago it was. Mobiles were not as cool then. Spoke to her on a landline, and she told me the exact same information that my brother had told me that she had said about our granddad. And she had also told me something that, and to this day, I will never forget, and it still gives me goosebumps. But she was like, oh, your granddad says he didn't mean to scare you. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you saw him at the top of the stairs and you shut the door. And that was about a week before I spoke to her. So I had an attic room in an old London building. And so I used to sleep with the door open because no one's coming up the stairs. It's far, it's just me and my flatmate. And I remember waking up and seeing a shadow in the door and just going, no, and closing the door and going back to sleep because that was quite a usual, regular occurrence for me because I'm weird. But she, yeah, she knew. So she spoke to that. And I was like, I was mind blown. Like I just burst into tears. I just felt like everything was validated in that moment of like, it's real. You're not insane. What you're seeing, sensing, feeling, knowing, all of it's real. So I just jumped in from there really and was like, let's go.
wow. Oh my God, that's so crazy. But it's
Yeah.
so cool, right? Like I think this is like it's just so fascinating because I think that you hear these stories from kids who've grown up with these gifts and we're taught from a young age, like not to trust those things. And I had a completely different upbringing in the sense that like we were in the church and
Mm,
it was very like demonized, right? So for me, breaking out of that and being able to start to access my own spiritual gifts and the amount of programming that I had around it, I was afraid to explore it.
mm.
So that's kind of like the other side of the coin. But when certain spiritual gifts began presenting themselves to me, I'm like, how could this be wrong? How could this be bad? This is coming from me. Like I'm, like this isn't someone else that's here like telling me something. Like I'm hearing these things, I'm observing these things, I'm witnessing these things. So do you have anything to share to someone who maybe is still operating from that programming where this is a kind of scary or, a topic that they've been told not to dive into? Because I really think that we should address that. I think this is a big topic as it relates to like the contrast in people's beliefs.
Yeah, I think as well for people, when you're bridging the gap between the two, you don't have to go full woo, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't need to jump all the way in and be into the whole thing. But all you need to do for me, the big power comes from literally just trusting yourself and your own intuition. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be open to spirit in your bedroom. You don't have to be open to setting practices up and saging the room and do if all of those things are not calling you right now, it's more the tapping into yourself and just
Yeah.
trusting you, because that is, like you say, that's the bit that can't go wrong. You are you. If you are feeling something in your gut, or if you are sensing something, or if there's a repeating song in your head, or you keep seeing signs over and over again, and you're just like, what is that? What does that mean? Explore that. Stay in that area. You are your comfort zone. You are your space of like, I can trust this. Because the truth is like everybody has an angelic team, a spirit team, and that's essentially all it is that they're communicating through your senses. And some of that is in the 3D by like either hearing a song on the radio or the feathers falling in the sky that happened to me yesterday, which was just beautiful, by the way.
What
Like,
happened? Share.
literally, I was sending a voice note to a friend of mine on a dog walk in the morning, and I was saying that I was just randomly in a bit of fear. Like, there's a lot of astrological energy going on right now. And so sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, oh, a bit out of my own energy. So I was like, straight away, dog walk. That's what clears my energy anyway. So I was talking, and I was actually talking about an idea for something I want to do that's linking my Instagram to my website. And so I was like talking through this idea, and then I was like, oh, and all of a sudden, but there was no birds flying by, completely blue sky. So I don't know how far up these had come from, but there was just two feathers floating all the way down. And I was still
Wow.
voice noting going, there's two feathers. I think they're here for me. I think they're for me.
It's
Because there's
so
like no
cool.
one else around as well. It's like, this is definitely for me. Yeah. It's like those kind of things are so fun, like so fun. Like it's just
Yeah.
enjoy it. That would be the other thing that I say. If there's anything that you're fearful of, don't explore it yet. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to step into the fear. Stay in the joy, stay in the light, essentially.
Yeah.
Like spirituality can be so much fun. Like I love working with intuition because it's so much fun. Like so much fun.
It is. I was just thinking about this last night and I was like laying in bed and I'm like, I'm recapitulating throughout my day and then I started recapitulating about my life and I was just like thinking about all of these things and I'm like, you manifested like the most epic shit in your life. Like, and I just started seeing like all the things and I'm like, wait, but you just kind of sometimes we think these things come into our life because whatever, it's fate or like, yeah, we just made this decision to go off to school or we made this decision. But no, like we are actively manifesting things all of the time. And when we're following our gut and following our intuition, some of the most epic things happen. And I don't have the same kind of experiences that you do where I'm seeing people or seeing things yet. I think that would be really cool. But, I asked my shaman when I was working with her years ago, I'm like, how do you develop like your sight? And she's like, well, you may want to be careful what you ask for
Hmm.
because she goes, if you want to see, then you're gonna see and you're gonna see everything and you may not like everything that you see. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just wait until it wants to come through. But, so I think that that's really cool. And I agree with what you're saying, like tapping into your own intuition because it really does. That's how it started for me was just like, okay, let me try this. Let me see if, because we all have our own, I call it like our inner GPS, right? where we can really access our own intuition and our own language with the universe and our own language with our guides and all of those things. And, I think it's really ironic in a way where it's like, I grew up like reading the Bible and all of those things. And okay, so there's angels all throughout the Bible, but I'm not supposed to believe that angels and spirits exist otherwise. And it's kind of confusing, right? Because me as a child, I'm like, well, why is it so scary then to talk to someone who can talk to angels? Like if angels exist, but we're not allowed to talk, I don't, the whole thing is just like a walking contradictory for me. So you say that everyone has like their angelic team, right? So is this kind of the work that you do, is work with their specific guides, and everyone has guides? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so this is also an interesting one because I do have a bit of a different take than most psychics on this in terms of me believing you don't need to really know who's in your team, like at all. So
Mm,
even though I can speak to spirit, I can connect in with crossed souls, I can see whatever I see. I I know I've got a huge team, huge. However, I speak through my granddad and my granddad only. So I will communicate with him. So if I'm talking and doing, say, a reading for a client, it's him I'm talking to and he's communicating. He's like a connector for me. Although I can then, if I want to latch on and speak to others, I can. But I think there's this huge misconception of like, well, I don't know who my team is. I don't know their name. I don't know this. I don't know that. And it doesn't matter. They're all operating in your favor, whether it is someone who is linked to you in terms of they are a family member, a friend who has crossed, or if it's someone who has been set with you for life. Like my granddad died when my dad was young. So my dad was literally like 2, 3 years old when he died. So I know that his path was to be my guide. I know that I probably lived with him previously in a past life at some point, and that he is here for me in this capacity. But I don't know. I know that there's also guides that will come through. So I know that I had a guide when I started learning Reiki for the first time. It was a very specific energy that was with me, but I didn't need to know his name. I didn't need, I'm saying he, it's a he. Um, but this is the thing. It's like we have guides and angels for different things, but the easiest thing to do is just talk and know that you're speaking to something, someone,
mm.
somewhere. Because, yeah, I mean, what I've heard about my team, unbelievable. Like, people are like, you do know you've got trees in your team. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm often talking to trees. I love a
Me
tree.
too. I love trees.
Yeah.
My best friend when I was a kid was a tree, was our apple tree in
Nice.
the backyard. Yeah. And then it
Here
got
is
struck by lightning.
a little manifesting trick for you. So my favorite thing to do if I want to call in more, and this is a reminder for myself to do this because I did this for my biggest launch ever, but I have a tree that is in the back garden and I would go out and stand on her kind of, it's not really her route, but it is a bit of a route. And I would talk to her and I would ask her how many more clients I'm going to call in and if she can help call more in because she's rooted into the ground that is in your home because she's in that garden. So it's like calling in the abundance through her energy. Really fun, really powerful.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
and so
really
many people
cool.
don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to think I was a little crazy, but when I was a kid, my best friend was our apple tree in the backyard, and I was always hanging out. I was talking to the tree, and the tree got struck by lightning. And
Mm.
I remember I bawled my eyes out. I mean, like I cried so because we had to, eventually like cut the tree down, and I it was so traumatic for me. And I think it's really interesting because I never really lost that close of like family members, and so but I've lost grandparents, and I didn't cry as much whenever, because I was young. I didn't really understand what was going on around the same age, but for some reason, this tree, it was like, oh my God, she was like whatever, he or she, I guess it would be a she if she's producing fruit, right? But it was really fascinating that like I cared that much about the tree, but I was always climbing trees, and still to this day I ground all the time with trees. I think it's really powerful because I believe that they're sentient, and when you really start to
100%.
understand how all of
Yeah.
this stuff works and how everything is energy and how we're all connected, like this is the thing that, yeah, maybe it sounds crazy, okay, we're talking to trees, but like we're clearly, two successful individuals who have a good head on our shoulders. Like it's just funny to talk about whenever people aren't there yet in this society, but I think that those who are listening here, of course, are. But I love this. I think that it's so cool.
So something that Spirit are telling me is that your tree was actually a guide for a set period of time in your life. So
My
it's
God,
like that
stop.
journey and that transition shifted and changed. So that was
Don't say
why
that.
it was time for her to leave. It is a she.
Don't say
She's
that. I'm
so
gonna
proud
cry.
of you as well. She's really proud of you. She's a nice tree. I can see her. How funny.
And she was perfect. She was the most perfect tree because I was able to like she had really strong branches and like I could sit in this one little like area where I would just sit up there all the time. And I'm just like literally getting emotional thinking about this the tree, right? So it's just funny how
She's
we
got like a grandmother protective energy. Like it's that kind
yeah, it
of
was
tree.
always like that. And really interestingly enough, just like you and I have shared a bit about our backgrounds, but that was like a crucial time in my life too, where I didn't really feel like I had many other people, like humans, right? And so I spent a lot of time at home and in the backyard. And so, yeah, that was my tree. Oh, I love
Love
that. I love that.
that.
Okay, so how does someone know that they need to work with a psychic business coach? Like, what does that look like? And where is someone in their journey when they know like this is the right conversation to begin exploring?
So, in their journey, they could actually be in different spaces. If you are proactive, you would do it as soon as possible, purely because energy makes up more than like 95% of your strategy, but everyone thinks it's a strategy. So everyone's just looking for the next thing. Like, how do I launch this? How do I set this membership up? How do I do that? How do I do that? And the truth is like any strategy for success in your business can work, but not every strategy works for everybody. And
Mhm.
your energy is so unique. And it's very much a space of actually cultivating your business around your energy because your business also has its own energetic signature and energetic framework. It's been called to you, it's come into your life, kind of like a big bubble that's been floating through the sky, and then it's found you, and you have to be able to nurture it. But you have to match your energy to it, not throw a whole bunch of stuff into it to see if it's going to work or if it's going to
Ah,
expand because we drain our energy so much when we're pushing. So much in hustle culture right now is very much like just try harder, do more, push the here, push there, launch more, launch bigger, launch brighter, be louder, be this, be that. But not everybody's energy is fulfilled from that. And the truth is like we need the give and take. It's the up and down, it's the in and out. It's like if we're pushing, we have to have energy coming back. And if you're pushing
yeah.
in the wrong way, that energy isn't coming back. So the
Mm,
other area where people really do start to come to me is when they've tried all the things. They're like, oh, I
yeah.
tried a membership, I tried a group thing, I tried a mastermind, I tried this, I tried that, and like nothing's working. And I know
Mm,
I've got a really great idea. I know that I'm supposed to do this. And that normally means that there's some form of energy block somewhere. Because I
yeah.
speak to this quite a lot of like, actually, especially for women, it's three main chakras that we really need to work with in our business. Our solar plexus, which is in our stomach, which is really our bright, shining light. That's your main confidence center. It's how
Mm,
you're showing up in the world. It's our heart, which is like literally your purpose, your kind of your connecting piece to your people, and your throat. And the throat is the one
mm.
that is blocked the most. Like,
Really? That makes a
yeah,
lot of
so
sense. Yeah.
over the years, I always say this. So I am an empath. So if I am working with somebody, I can feel physical sensations that they're feeling in their body or the energy blocks. And so before I even did anything with business-esque stuff, I was doing tarot readings. And again, I would say it was probably about 98% of the readings. I would be coughing and I would have a sore throat. And I'm like, what's wrong with your throat? Like every single time. And it would be
Wow.
like, oh, I'm just not speaking up in this situation. I'm not speaking clearly. I'm not authentic. I'm not this. I'm not that. And it all stems back essentially to the witch wound era of like, okay, you spoke up, you were individual, you were this, that, and the other, and you were persecuted.
Yeah.
So we still hold that frequency, whether
Yep.
you believe in past lives and that you were a witch, or whether you look at it as DNA, right? If you
Mhm.
can do an ancestry DNA test kit thing and it can tell you how far back your ancestry goes and what locations and places, please believe that that trauma is still in your DNA. Like
Oh my God.
it is so strong. Like
Yeah.
we are the era that is breaking that and we are healing that, but it takes work. And so sometimes we think that we've got this big authentic voice and we don't. So we're not saying our message, we're not putting our voice out there. We're copying someone else's template. We're
Yeah.
copying the phase, the funnel, the process, like nothing is actually individual. And that's a
Yeah.
witch wound thing.
Yeah, 100 million%. I wish we could like that would be cool to create something. My entrepreneur brain always goes to like, what if there were a way that you could see this? And actually, I'm watching a whole series on like the gene keys right now with Richard Rudd, who's teaching it. And I'm like, that's kind of like that's a little bit of what we're talking about here. That actually is the codex and everything, like the codes and the DNA that will share with you what your wounding is. So it's kind of cool. That's the section that I'm on right now. I don't know if you've dove into gene keys as much as
A
like,
little bit.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
they're
not
very, it's
like all the
fascinating.
way in, but yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really fascinating. If you haven't, guys, if you haven't dove into Gene Keys, it is, there's a lot. There's a lot. So it's definitely not, I'm not an expert in this at all, but I'm just watching, like I said, this documentary on it now where he's explaining that, yeah, the certain codes that we have are actually the map of the wounding that we're here to shift, which is really fascinating. And I know like you
It's
were designed
similar in
to.
astrology. So I'm very much into astrology. And for me, so I know that I'm supposed to use my voice, it's part of my journey, but there is a placement in your birth chart, your natal chart called the Chiron placement.
Mm.
Your Chiron is your wounded healer. So this is something that you are supposed to overcome to then teach others. And mine is in Gemini, which is voice. So that explains why when I was a child, I couldn't really speak. I couldn't talk to my family outside of like my mum, my
Wow.
brother. And that now it is the thing that I am supposed to help people with. I'm like, oh,
Wow, of
why I
course.
talk about the throat all the time. Thank you.
That makes so much sense. And yeah, I think that there's such a huge world of all this stuff. And I wish that I had the ability to like dive into all of the things because I want to learn all of this. Like, I want to know everything about everything. And just for my own journey, like, this is a never-ending journey. And I think that it is so fun to learn more about yourself and to learn more about how all of this works because there's so much unseen. And we know that things are unseen, right? And if you're listening to this, you likely have those understandings at least, right? Where
Yeah.
like we know that there are things that are unseen. We know that vibration is real. We know that these, that these frequencies are real, right? If you're listening to this, you are currently experiencing a frequency wave from your phone to your ear. And so just because it's unseen doesn't mean that it's not real, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I truly believe wholeheartedly, I've seen, visions of it, and I haven't really shared a ton publicly because probably it's the witch wound that's still coming through. But I've seen myself like in a previous life being burned at the stake. And I knew that was part of why it was difficult for me to speak on these things and talk on these things and actually make us, take a stance. Because for a long time it was like very scary. And I had to work through that because that was still very alive in me. And in that particular life, I believe, at least from the gathering that I've had, that I had my current husband and my daughter, whether she was a boy or girl, I don't know. But in this life, it was the same souls, and we're here to like break that cycle together, is what I've gathered from the different images that I've had. So it's fascinating, but I also think too, like, look at the current day and age that we're in with cancel culture and all of that. It's the same thing. It's we're
Yeah.
burning people at the stake. We're making people afraid to speak on what they actually truly want to talk about because everyone is so quick to judge and so quick to cancel people and so quick to do that. And I just have made the declaration that like I refuse that that even exists like in my reality. Like I'm not cancelable, if you will. Like I've just, and that's a very big declaration to make because of how far I've had to come with this. But I refuse to accept that. Like I'm going to share my voice and I know that it's going to amplify in the ways that it needs to. And that's it. I know that I'm divinely protected.
100%. And what's really interesting for me when I look at the way that business has shifted, so it's like that voice has got bigger because of the online space. But at the same time, if you look at people like ourselves and people like we're around, we're all building these communities of safe spaces where we can speak our truth, where we are safe in our little village that we are building ourselves. I've had multiple lives as a witch before, and I knew that I was supposed to build a community of people when I had a vision from one of my past lives where I was essentially like the doula. It was somewhere in like Russia or something like that at many moons ago. And the ladies in my village protected me. So the witch hunters came and they hid me like outside of the village so that I didn't die. So I've had multiple where I did die. Fun. But this one, because so that came to me
Wow.
very much as part of my healing journey. So they showed me the others first. And then it was like, look, you actually were saved, you were protected, you didn't always die because you spoke your voice or did the thing or
Oh,
saved the women when they had babies. Like,
wow.
you did the thing. So then I was like, oh, I'm supposed to like have more of these women so that we can all support each other in that same way of like, you can't cancel us, you can't say this, you can't do that. Like, my thing is very much like having things taken away from you. So it's like, I want women to not
Yeah.
have like I want them to build things that is theirs, that is
Yeah.
like 100% authentic to them so that it can't be taken away. You can't
Yeah.
cancel you if you're 100% who you are because it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
if you're putting on a face, if you're portraying something, if you're hiding things, if you're half-assing it essentially, of course people can cancel you. Of course they can take things away. But as soon as you're in authentic authority, it's not possible because
Yeah.
those who love you and radiate to you will stay with you.
Yeah.
So
Always. I agree with that. It's so true. And as long as if we are, there is a certain level of responsibility that we hold as online experts, right? Like we have a level of vetting that we need to do. There's a level of, I'm not just going to spew some bullshit that I've never done, or I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you to do something that I've never done. There is a level of responsibility, and that comes with taking ownership too. And I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, if some because people try to people try to cancel people all the time, right? And have these smear campaigns and different things. And, the people that I've watched navigate those things in such a beautiful way are people who are just like, hey, like, I'm gonna own whatever I did here and I'll own my part and I will own it and then move on because, we also reserve the right to be wrong about things. We also reserve the right to change our minds. And I think as long as we're holding that responsibility in a sacred way, knowing that people are listening to what we have to say, they're taking action on what we have to say. That is a level of responsibility that not everybody should have a microphone in front of them telling people what to do. But I hold that in a very sacred space. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's like, yeah, so how are you going to be canceled when you're just telling the truth all the time?
Yeah. And it's a really good note to say that as well of like, for the audience of anyone who wants to work with people within the spiritual space to know who you're working with.
Yeah.
Because you're right in the sense of a lot of people will have a really great meditation and then think that they are capable of holding space and healing and doing all of this work. And it's like, wait a minute. People need to have gone through cycles with this
Yeah.
spiritual stuff. They need to have done the spiritual journey like fully, not just a week retreat, but like fully have lived this
Yeah.
experience because yeah
Yeah.
that's one of the things that does. I mean, I love that people love the spiritual stuff and that it's really getting momentum, but yeah, just as a like just always looking for that integrity and always trusting your gut in who what rooms and spaces you're entering to like yeah love it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and you can tell that you are absolutely an embodiment of this work, and I think that that's really important to your point. A lot of people will learn something and then they want to turn around and teach it, which is great. It's coming from an incredible place, but I believe that, knowledge needs to become wisdom through embodiment, and that's how it's the true that's the cycle of, okay, like this is who I am now. Embodiment is I am a walking embodiment of this. And I think those are the people, to your point, like that you want to look for, right? For those who are listening, if you are looking to go into this space. So I think that's a
Mhm.
great segue into where can people find you, right? If someone is really like, okay, this is really interesting. I want to dive into this a little bit deeper, maybe learn more about Julie and what it is that she does. Where can they find you? Where do you hang out most on social media? Share with us that.
So social media, I'm over on Instagram, and that's Julie Chandler Psychic. I love Instagram. That's kind of my go-to. It is me in the DMs, as it were. I do also have a podcast that I'm trying to kickstart again, which is called Intuitively Led. Essentially, all things sort of fun and spiritual, but really just honing the message in of like really digging into the healing process, which I think we all need, and that clearing and but using it strategically. Like this is not about just like, oh, floaty, floaty. It's like, no, we can really use this and cultivate into our action plan and really move and shift. I mean, talking timelines before, like I've shifted so many timelines in the last year or 2 years. It's
Yeah.
actually been ridiculous. And like the amount of deja vu I've had, I should probably see a doctor. Like it's ridiculous. I'm like, oh no, we've just met the timelines together again. Brilliant.
It's true. I feel like a different person. Like, and Julie and I met inside of the mastermind that I'm in, and it's just, oh my gosh, you just feel like a different person. You know, the more that you do this work, the more you tap in, the more that you open up to your own authentic journey. It's incredible to see how quickly things shift. So, okay, so as we're landing the plane today, I'd love to just ask if there's any final thoughts, any kind of message that maybe I didn't ask about that you feel is necessary to come through.
I will just reiterate, it's an energy thing, not a strategy thing for anybody in their business. And to always consult your energy first. I operate with an energy first method, like always checking in with your energy first. It should be you first before you take any form of action, and trusting that your first instinct, your intuitive hit is the subtle, silent thing. That's the thing to trust. And yeah, just trust it. Jump and fly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, mic drop. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for being here today. This was so much fun. I appreciate it. Guys, definitely go check her out. You can see she's incredible and I just adore her. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Soul Sister, thank you so much for tuning in to this entire episode today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a favor and leave a quick review? This allows me to reach more people, and if you found value, I know others in your life will too. Also, be sure to share this episode on social media along with your biggest takeaways so I know what resonates most with you and I can keep the good stuff coming. And if you're looking to dive into a deeper connection than this podcast will allow, consider checking out my Rise to Riches experience in the show notes below. I would love to hear how these messages have helped you take one step closer to living your soul-powered life and becoming the wildly wealthy woman. Sis, let's continue to rise together. I'll see you next time. Bye.